What if the West continues to ignore and refuse recognition of Ibrahim Traoré as Burkina Faso's rightful president? Despite Western resistance, a bold statement was made recently. 10 nations officially acknowledged Traoré as the legitimate leader of Burkina Faso. This diplomatic move sent a powerful message. The West's disapproval no longer carries the same weight it once did. Whether or not Washington, Paris, or Brussels approves seems increasingly irrelevant. The real question now is, why is the West so determined to oppose Traoré, and how long can this standoff last? On June 28th, history was made in Ouagadougou. Inside the grand halls of the presidential palace, ambassadors and delegations from 10 different countries gathered for a ceremony that would reshape Burkina Faso's international image. In a defining moment for the nation's foreign policy, these countries stood together to affirm their recognition of Ibrahim Traoré as the country's legitimate head of state. But this was more than a diplomatic formality. It was a statement of defiance. It marked Burkina Faso's refusal to be bullied by foreign powers, its determination to choose its own destiny, and its growing influence on the global stage. For Traoré, a soldier-turned-leader, it was a victory for sovereignty, independence, and African pride. This growing divide between the West and Burkina Faso reflects much deeper issues: the lingering shadow of neocolonialism, Western interference, and Africa's ongoing struggle for autonomy. While Western governments continue to question Traoré's legitimacy, nations across Africa, Asia, and Latin America have embraced his leadership as part of a new era of South-South solidarity and self-determination. When Traoré took the podium that afternoon, the atmosphere was electric. Delegates from around the world applauded, their presence symbolizing something far greater than diplomacy: a rejection of Western dominance and a celebration of African resilience. The ceremony became a global declaration that Burkina Faso's future belongs to its own people, not to the approval of foreign powers. Burkina Faso's journey has never been an easy one. Since gaining independence in 1960, the nation has faced multiple coups, economic hardships, and external interference. Yet with Traoré's rise, many see a new beginning, one focused on stability, national pride, and unity. For decades, the West justified its control over African politics through claims of promoting democracy and human rights. In Traoré's case, Western officials have cited electoral irregularities and governance concerns to withhold recognition. However, many African and non-Western states argue that these criticisms are thinly veiled attempts to preserve influence in a region increasingly resistant to foreign control. The nations that now stand beside Burkina Faso emphasize something the West often ignores: respect for sovereignty. Their recognition of Traoré was not merely political. It was an acknowledgement of the Burkinabe people's right to decide their own leadership without interference. During the event, ambassadors from nations including Russia, Algeria, Rwanda, and Germany presented their credentials, highlighting Burkina Faso's growing diplomatic relevance and renewed engagement on the global stage. The country, once dismissed as politically unstable, is now asserting itself as a central player in shaping Africa's future. So, as the West continues to withhold recognition and apply pressure, the question remains: can they truly afford to ignore a nation that is redefining its destiny and inspiring a new wave of African independence? Burkina Faso's message under Traoré is clear. The age of foreign control is over. The continent's future will be built by Africans for Africans. Whether the West accepts it or not, add your voice to the total liberation of Africa by leaving a comment in the comments section below. Do not forget to like and subscribe for more informative content like this one. Now, back to the issue at hand. The West's unease toward Ibrahim Traoré's leadership runs far deeper than simple political disagreement. It's rooted in history, ideology, and shifting global power dynamics. His rise to power through 2 military coups in 2022, first ousting President Roch-Marc Christian Kabore in January, then interim President Paul-Henri Sandaogo Damiba in September, completely disrupted Burkina Faso's constitutional order. To Western governments, this was a red flag. For decades, the West has insisted that democracy and elections are the only legitimate paths to power. From that perspective, Traoré's ascent through the military, not the ballot box, undermines what they consider legitimacy. But perhaps the deeper question is this: why does the West decide whose leadership is legitimate in Africa and whose isn't? Since taking office, Traoré has faced a storm of criticism from Western institutions and media. Reports accuse his administration of restricting foreign media access, tightening control over state communications, and promoting a national-first narrative that sidelines Western voices. To critics, these actions look like censorship and authoritarianism. To Traoré's supporters, they're acts of sovereignty, a necessary defense against decades of Western disinformation and manipulation. This defiance has put Traoré on a collision course with the West's preferred political model. His refusal to bend to outside pressure, coupled with his commitment to African-led governance, has made him both a symbol of independence and a target of suspicion. Western leaders often cite human rights and press freedom concerns to justify their opposition, but many Africans see it as another example of selective outrage aimed at silencing leaders who refuse to obey foreign interests. Perhaps what unsettles the West most, however, is Traoré's geopolitical pivot. In a bold and unprecedented move, Burkina Faso expelled French military forces, closed French bases, and strengthened ties with Russia. The reopening of the Russian embassy in Ouagadougou and Traoré's attendance at the Russia-Africa Summit signaled a new era of partnership, one that challenges Western dominance in the Sahel. In a world increasingly divided between Western and Eastern blocs, this alignment represents a clear strategic shift away from Europe and toward multipolar cooperation. To Western policymakers, such moves threaten decades of influence in a region long seen as their backyard. To Africans, it represents the end of dependence, a symbolic and practical step toward reclaiming power. Adding to the tension are Traoré's ambitious promises. He's vowed to make Burkina Faso self-sufficient in agriculture, build a nuclear power plant, and develop electric vehicles. Bold, transformative goals that inspire many at home, but trigger skepticism abroad. Western analysts dismiss them as unrealistic, yet supporters see them as visionary steps toward industrial and technological independence. At the heart of Traoré's message lies an unapologetic anti-colonial stance. He has openly urged African nations to control their own natural resources, reject foreign exploitation, and unite under Pan-African ideals. His speeches echo the revolutionary spirit of leaders like Thomas Sankara, Patrice Lumumba, and Kwame Nkrumah, all of whom challenged Western hegemony and paid the price. For the West, this rhetoric is deeply unsettling. It threatens established economic systems and political influence that have endured since colonial times. For Africans, it's a long overdue call for self-determination, dignity, and sovereignty. Despite ongoing Western opposition, 10 countries have formally recognized Traoré as Burkina Faso's legitimate head of state. This growing support underscores the country's enduring strategic, economic, and political significance. Burkina Faso sits at the crossroads of the Sahel, rich in gold and other minerals, and plays a vital role in regional security and trade networks. What's more, the nation has a history of democratic progress. With international assistance, including from USAID, Burkina Faso successfully held free presidential elections in 2015 and local elections in 2016. earning global praise for its democratic strides, even amid recent turbulence. That legacy continues to attract nations eager to see African governance evolve on its own terms, not dictated by foreign capitals. Ultimately, the West's hesitation to recognize Ibrahim Traoré reveals more about its struggle to adapt to Africa's new political reality than it does about Traoré himself. Across the continent, leaders and citizens alike are beginning to reject foreign approval as the measure of legitimacy. Burkina Faso's message to the world is clear. Africa's future will no longer be defined in Western boardrooms or embassies. It will be shaped in Africa, by Africans, for Africans. Burkina Faso is a nation rich in potential, both in natural resources and regional influence. Gold remains its dominant export, but the country also possesses significant reserves of manganese, zinc, phosphate, silver, and diamonds. These resources offer major opportunities for trade, investment, and industrial growth, particularly within the mining sector, which is central to Burkina Faso's economy and job creation. Yet Burkina Faso's value extends far beyond its mineral wealth. Historically, it has played a pivotal diplomatic role in West Africa. During Blaise Compaoré's presidency, the country frequently acted as a mediator in regional disputes, helping to diffuse crises in nations like Togo and Niger. Its strategic location in the Sahel and its legacy of conflict resolution make it a key stabilizing force in one of the world's most volatile regions. In the Sahel, home to countries such as Mali, Niger, and Chad, persistent issues like armed conflict, terrorism, and humanitarian crises continue to threaten stability. In this context, Burkina Faso's ability to engage constructively with its neighbors enhances its strategic importance. For nations and international organizations focused on peace, security, and development, Burkina Faso represents an indispensable partner. In recent years, Ouagadougou has made tangible progress in regional diplomacy. The government has deepened cooperation with Ghana, fostering collaboration in trade, energy, and security. It also peacefully resolved a long-standing border dispute with Mali, demonstrating a commitment to regional harmony. These diplomatic achievements signal a broader effort to strengthen West African unity and cooperation, aligning with the region's aspirations for integration, stability, and shared prosperity. Burkina Faso's engagement isn't limited to its neighborhood. The country is an active member of international organizations, such as the International Criminal Court, ICC, and the Liptako Gourma Authority, platforms that allow it to amplify its voice globally, attract investment, and participate in shaping multilateral policy. This commitment to international cooperation reinforces its reputation as a country that values diplomacy, transparency, and constructive global engagement. Despite its promise, Burkina Faso still faces serious development challenges, including poverty, food insecurity, and weak infrastructure. To tackle these issues, it has relied on partnerships with international donors, NGOs, and development agencies, which provide humanitarian assistance, technical expertise, and financial support. These collaborations not only aim to improve the quality of life for Burkina-based citizens, but also strengthen the country's long-term economic stability, an outcome that benefits both Burkina Faso and its international allies. Given such potential and a willingness to engage on the global stage, a key question arises. Why has the West been so hesitant to recognize Ibrahim Traoré's leadership? The answer lies in deeper geopolitical and ideological dynamics. Western hesitation isn't just about internal politics in Ouagadougou. It reflects a historical pattern in global relations, especially between the West and Africa. For decades, Western powers have tended to structure partnerships in ways that advance their own strategic and economic agendas, often at the expense of local autonomy. Countries like Burkina Faso, rich in minerals and resources, have frequently seen their wealth extracted under unequal terms, with foreign corporations reaping profits while local development lags behind. Many of these contracts have been shaped by Western economic interests, reinforcing dependency rather than empowerment. Moreover, Western aid and cooperation often come with political conditions. Development assistance is frequently tied to governance models, policy frameworks, and economic reforms that align with Western priorities, sometimes undermining national sovereignty and limiting a country's ability to chart its own path. In this light, Traore's assertive push for self-reliance, resource sovereignty, and Pan-African unity directly challenges long-standing Western influence. His message is clear: Burkina Faso seeks partnership, not patronage, mutual respect, not dependency. And that vision, while celebrated by many across Africa, remains deeply unsettling to the traditional powers of the West. Ibrahim Traoré represents a new wave of African leadership, one that challenges the entrenched systems of dependency and imbalance that have long defined the continent's relationship with the West. His vision for Burkina Faso is rooted in fair, mutually beneficial partnerships, not the exploitative arrangements of the past. Traoré insists that Burkina Faso must retain a greater share of profits from its own resources, attract meaningful investment for national development, and empower local industries to drive self-sustained growth. At the core of his message is independence, the determination to break free from foreign control and ensure that Burkina Faso's wealth serves its own people first. He envisions a nation that thrives through self-reliance, industrial empowerment, and resource sovereignty, setting an example for other African nations seeking to chart their own destinies. Traoré's anti-colonial rhetoric resonates deeply across the continent. He calls on African leaders to resist neo-colonial exploitation and to reclaim control over their own economies and resources. For him, it is no longer acceptable for former colonial powers or any external actors to dictate the terms of Africa's progress while reaping disproportionate rewards. Instead, he advocates for true partnerships based on equality and respect, not subordination. This stance represents a fundamental break from the traditional Western model of engagement. By promoting equity, sovereignty, and reciprocity, Traoré is challenging a world order in which the West has long held the advantage. His refusal to conform to Western expectations and his willingness to realign Burkina Faso with alternative global partners has made many Western capitals uneasy. Western corporations and governments that have benefited from Africa's uneven economic structures now face an assertive Burkina Faso demanding fairer contracts and transparent resource agreements. Traoré's push for economic justice disrupts decades of Western dominance and exposes a system designed to maintain control through dependency. His growing partnership with non-Western powers, particularly Russia, further compounds Western anxiety as it signals a geopolitical shift that could redefine alliances and power balances across the continent. At the heart of Traoré's agenda is self-reliance, a direct challenge to the economic leverage that Western nations have historically used to influence African policies. By supporting domestic entrepreneurship, promoting local manufacturing, and reducing foreign aid dependence, Traoré aims to build a Burkina Faso that stands on its own terms. In response, Western powers have often chosen isolation over engagement, employing tools like sanctions, conditional aid, and media narratives to undermine his legitimacy. Indeed, Western media frequently portray Traoré as an authoritarian leader who came to power through force, while downplaying his broader message of sovereignty, reform, and anti-neocolonialism. This portrayal serves a political purpose: to discredit an alternative governance model that challenges Western influence and refuses to conform to liberal democratic frameworks defined outside Africa. However, the tide of global politics is shifting. the West's disapproval is losing its power to define legitimacy. A growing number of nations, particularly in Africa, Asia, and Latin America, have begun to recognize Traore's leadership and engage with Burkina Faso on new, equal terms. These countries see opportunity where the West sees defiance, a chance to forge partnerships grounded in mutual respect, resource fairness, and shared development goals. Nations such as China and Russia have already stepped forward, alongside several African states, to offer investment, infrastructure support, and technological collaboration. Their approach, often free of the political preconditions attached to Western aid, aligns closely with Traore's vision of independent progress. Together, these alliances point toward a new international order, one where Africa is no longer a passive participant, but an active architect of its own future. While the West continues to criticize Traore's leadership style, it often ignores the real struggles confronting Burkina Faso: rampant youth unemployment, unsafe artisanal mining, and the lack of basic infrastructure. When thousands of young Burkinabe risk their lives daily, digging for gold with their bare hands just to survive, we must ask ourselves, what truly defines terrorism? Is it only armed violence? Or can it also be the economic exploitation, social neglect, and political abandonment that strip people of dignity and opportunity? Traore's decision to build alliances with nations that invest in people rather than profit offers a glimmer of hope. These partnerships aim to empower local communities, create sustainable jobs, and restore the sense of agency that decades of foreign dependency have eroded. They represent a shift from charity to cooperation, from imposed development models to homegrown progress. For Burkina Faso, these alliances are more than economic deals. They are declarations of freedom. Freedom from external control, from distorted narratives, and from global systems that prioritize corporate gain over human development. Each new partnership signals a step toward the vision Traore champions: sovereignty, dignity, and self-determination for his nation, and by extension, for Africa as a whole. But this raises a profound question. As 10 countries now publicly recognize Traore's leadership, does this mark the beginning of a new era? One where Western influence in Africa is losing its grip? Is the old strategy of control, pressure, and manipulation finally becoming obsolete on a continent that now demands respect, equality, and fair partnership? Or will the West respond by tightening its grip, spreading misinformation, escalating sanctions, and leveraging media narratives to undermine this growing wave of independence? Whatever the answer, one thing is clear: Africa is awake, the world is watching, and a new chapter in global power dynamics is being written right now in Burkina Faso. Tell us what you think in the comments section below. We explore the rich history, culture, and the ongoing struggle for sovereignty in Africa. Join us in this important conversation by subscribing to our channel. By subscribing, you're not just staying informed, you're becoming part of a movement dedicated to reclaiming Africa's rightful place on the global stage. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. Let's work together to spread knowledge and inspire change. Thanks for watching.